My name is Maya. I'm 36 years old, and I run a highly successful graphic design firm in Chicago. As I sat in my wheelchair in the middle of a glittering ballroom at the Grand Bayfront Hotel, surrounded by 300 wealthy guests in expensive evening wear, I watched my husband Marcus wipe a single perfect tear from his eye. Beside him stood my best friend of 10 years, Chloe, her hand resting comfortingly on his shoulder. They were up on the main stage, bathed in the spotlight, giving a heartbreakingly beautiful speech about my terrible car accident and the profound, silent isolation of my tragic deafness. They were playing the roles of the devoted, long-suffering husband and the fiercely loyal best friend to absolute perfection. The crowd was captivated, murmuring with sympathy. But what Marcus and Chloe had absolutely no idea about was that my fingers were currently wrapped tightly around a small black remote control hidden deep inside the pocket of my silk dress, a remote synced directly to the ballroom's main audio projector. You see, exactly 3 weeks earlier I had been sitting on my own living room couch when my ears suddenly popped and my hearing miraculously returned. And within minutes of that miracle I heard them. I heard my husband complaining about what a useless burden I had become. I heard them discussing the $3 million accidental death life insurance policy he had recently taken out on me. I heard Chloe, the woman who had been my rock since college, suggest the perfect way to swap out my post-surgery blood thinners for a lethal dose of a different medication to induce a fatal heart attack. I pretended. And you know what I did? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't leap up and confront them. I kept my face perfectly blank, stared straight ahead at the TV, and pretended to read the subtitles. I stayed absolutely silent while my blood turned to ice, because the moment I heard their murderous plot, I stopped being their victim and started planning their total destruction. But before I tell you exactly how I hijacked that projector and played the audio of their sick murder plot to the entire ballroom, and before I tell you how the FBI stormed that charity gala and dragged them both out in handcuffs, do me a favor. Smash that like button right now, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below telling me what city or country you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I read every single one, and I need to know I'm not alone in this. Trust me, you are going to want to hear every single second of how I took them down. To understand the absolute horror of what they tried to do to me, I need to take you back to the beginning. Let me take you back to when my life felt like a fairy tale, back before I knew the man I shared a bed with was a monster wearing my husband's face. To understand the absolute horror of what they tried to do to me, I need to take you back to the beginning. Let me take you back to when my life felt like a fairy tale, back before I knew the man I shared a bed with was a monster wearing my husband's face, and the woman I called my sister was a snake waiting in the grass. Marcus and I met 6 years ago at a rooftop networking event. He was charming, incredibly handsome, and had this smooth, confident way of talking that just drew you in. He worked as a finance manager at a mid-sized firm. He did well for himself, but I was the breadwinner. My graphic design firm had just landed 3 massive corporate contracts, and I was pulling in high 6 figures. At first, Marcus said he loved my ambition. He called me his boss lady and told everyone how proud he was of me. But as the years went on, that pride turned into something else, something sour. I started noticing these little passive-aggressive comments. If I bought a nice piece of furniture, he'd say, "Must be nice to just throw money around." If I had to work late, he'd sigh and tell me I was neglecting our marriage. So like a fool, I did what so many women do. I started shrinking myself to make him feel big. I downplayed my bonuses. I stopped talking about my successes. I paid for our luxury vacations but told him his contribution to the travel fund is what made it possible. I handed him the crown so he wouldn't feel emasculated. And then there was Chloe. Chloe and I had been best friends for 10 years. We met in college, shared a cramped dorm room, ate cheap ramen noodles together, and promised we would always have each other's backs. When I started my business, she was my first cheerleader. When I married Marcus, she was my maid of honor, standing right beside me, straightening my veil and telling me how happy she was for me. She practically lived at our house. She came over for Sunday dinners, drank wine on our couch, and went on weekend trips with us. She wasn't just my best friend. She was my family. I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world to have a devoted husband and a fiercely loyal best friend. The nightmare started on a rainy Tuesday evening in October. I was driving home from a late client meeting. The roads were slick, the visibility was terrible, and as I drove through an intersection 10 minutes from my house, a delivery truck ran a red light. I don't remember the impact. I just remember the blinding flash of headlights, the sound of metal crushing metal, and then absolute, suffocating darkness. When I finally woke up in the hospital ICU, I was disoriented, covered in bandages, and in agonizing pain from 3 broken ribs and a severe concussion. But the pain wasn't what terrified me. What terrified me was the dead, heavy silence. I saw the doctor standing over my bed. I saw his lips moving. I saw the nurses rushing around, monitors flashing, machines working, but I couldn't hear a single thing. Not the beeping of the heart monitor, not the squeak of shoes on the linoleum, not my own voice when I tried to scream. The blunt force trauma to my head had caused severe swelling around my temporal bones, completely severing my hearing. The doctors told me by writing it down on a dry erase whiteboard that it was temporary. They said once the swelling went down, my hearing should return, but they couldn't promise when. It could be weeks. It could be months. I have never felt so isolated, so completely cut off from the world. Imagine being trapped inside a silent glass box, watching the world move around you but unable to connect with it. I was terrified. I was vulnerable. But Marcus and Chloe, God, they played their parts flawlessly. Marcus sat by my hospital bed for days. I couldn't hear him, but I watched tears stream down his face. I watched him kiss my knuckles and press his forehead against my arm. He bought me a stack of small whiteboards and dry erase markers so we could communicate. He wrote, "I'm here, baby. I'll never leave you. We'll get through this." And Chloe, she practically moved into the hospital waiting room. She brushed my hair when I couldn't lift my arms. She brought me my favorite lotions from home so I wouldn't have to smell like antiseptic. When I was finally discharged 2 weeks later, Chloe temporarily moved into our guest room to help Marcus take care of me. For the first few weeks at home, I relied on them for everything. They were my interpreters, my caretakers, my connection to the outside world. I would sit on the living room couch, wrapped in blankets, watching Marcus and Chloe talk to each other. They would laugh, and then Chloe would pick up a whiteboard and write down the joke so I could laugh too. I felt this overwhelming, deep well of gratitude for them. I remember crying in the bathroom one night, looking in the mirror at my bruised face, and thanking God that I had such an amazing husband and such a selfless best friend. I thought I was surrounded by pure love. I had no idea that while I was sitting right there in the room with them, trapped in my silent void, they were already planning my funeral. It happened exactly 3 weeks after the accident. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Marcus and Chloe had gone out to run some errands and grab lunch, leaving me alone in the house to rest. I was lying on the living room sofa, reading a book, wrapped in the suffocating silence I had been forced to get used to. And then I felt a sharp, sudden pressure in my right ear. It felt like being underwater and suddenly breaking the surface. There was a loud pop, and instantly, a rush of sound flooded my brain. I gasped and dropped my book. I could hear it. I could hear the low, steady hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I could hear the distant rumble of traffic passing by on the street outside. I brought my trembling hands to my face and let out a sob, and for the first time in nearly a month, I heard my own voice. I heard my own voice, and if I was crying, laughing, and shaking all at once. It was a miracle. The swelling had gone down just like the doctor said it would. My nightmare of silence was finally over. I sat up on the couch, my heart hammering with joy. I couldn't wait for Marcus and Chloe to get back. I pictured the look on my husband's face. I pictured him sweeping me into his arms, crying tears of relief. I pictured Chloe hugging me, telling me we were going to celebrate. I decided to wait right there on the couch and surprise them the second they walked through the door. About 20 minutes later, I heard the distinct sound of a key turning in the front door lock. I held my breath, a massive smile plastered on my face, ready to jump up. The door opened. I heard their footsteps in the foyer. I opened my mouth to shout surprise, but the word died in my throat. Before I could make a sound, I heard something else, the unmistakable wet sound of two people kissing passionately. I froze. My entire body went rigid. I was hidden from the foyer by the hallway wall, completely out of their line of sight. "God, I missed you today," I heard Marcus murmur. His voice was husky, intimate, the voice he used to use with me behind closed doors. "I was right next to you at lunch, baby," Chloe giggled. "My best friend, my sister." She was giggling in my husband's arms, inside my house. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I was going to vomit. They were having an affair. The two people I loved most in the world were betraying me. I pressed my hand hard over my mouth to keep from letting out the agonizing scream that was building in my chest. I thought that discovering their affair was the worst pain I could possibly experience. I was so incredibly wrong. The affair wasn't the nightmare. The affair was just the prologue. "We have to be careful," Marcus sighed, his footsteps moving slightly. "She's been so clingy lately. Every time I leave the room, she starts looking for me. I'm telling you, Chloe, I can't take this much longer. Playing the devoted caretaker to a death-broken woman is exhausting. She's a complete burden." "A burden," he called me a burden. "I know, baby," Chloe said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "But it's going to be over soon. Did you get the approval from the insurance company?" "Yeah," Marcus replied, and I could practically hear the smirk on his face. "The accidental death policy is fully active. $3 million. Since she signed it right before the crash, it's ironclad. If she doesn't survive her recovery, the payout is guaranteed." My blood turned to absolute ice. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "So what's the timeline?" Chloe asked, her tone shifting from romantic to purely clinical. "We can't just wait around forever. You said she's supposed to be on those post-surgery blood thinners for another month." "Right. Exactly," Marcus said. "Her heart is already under stress from the trauma of the crash. I've got the other pills, the ones my buddy from the clinic got me. They look exactly like her blood thinners. Same size, same white coating. But they're a massive dose of a stimulant that will trigger a massive cardiac event. And you're sure it'll look natural?" Chloe pressed. 100%, Marcus said confidently. "She's recovering from major trauma. A sudden heart attack from a blood clot or cardiac stress is completely plausible. The doctors won't even question it. We just swap the pills in her daily organizer. She swallows them, goes to sleep, and doesn't wake up. Then we wait a few months for the dust to settle, collect the $3 million, and move to Europe just like we planned." I couldn't breathe. My lungs forgot how to process oxygen. My husband and my best friend weren't just sleeping together. They were standing 10 feet away from me, casually planning my murder. They had priced my life at $3 million, and they were going to execute me in my own bed. "Come on," Marcus said lightly. "Let's go check on the patient. Make sure she's still breathing." I heard their footsteps moving toward the living room. I had exactly 3 seconds to make a choice. If I jumped up and confronted them, I was a dead woman. They were two healthy, able-bodied adults, and I was recovering from 3 broken ribs and a severe concussion. If they knew I could hear them, they wouldn't wait for the pills. They would kill me right then and there and stage a fall. Survival instinct took over. I let my eyes glaze over. I slackened my jaw. I picked up my book and stared blankly at the page, trapping myself back inside the invisible, silent glass box I had just escaped from. Marcus and Chloe walked into the living room. I didn't look up until Marcus stepped directly into my field of vision and waved his hand. I looked up, plastering a look of innocent, pleasant surprise on my face. I gave them a warm smile. "Hey, you useless bitch," Marcus said, smiling brightly at me. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. He was testing me. He was looking right into my eyes, smiling his charming, perfect smile, and calling me a bitch to my face. I didn't flinch. I kept my smile wide and grateful. I picked up my whiteboard from the coffee table and wrote, "Did you guys have a good lunch?" Chloe stepped forward, leaning her head on Marcus's shoulder. She looked at me with such profound, undisguised disgust that it made my skin crawl. "We had a great lunch," Chloe said out loud. her voice mocking. "We talked about how we're going to spend your money after you're dead." Then, she picked up her own dry erase marker and wrote on her board, "It was lovely. We brought you back some soup." I read her board, nodded happily, and signed the word for thank you. For the next 3 weeks, I lived inside a psychological torture chamber that no movie or nightmare could ever properly capture. I was a prisoner in my own home, a hostage in my own body. I had to wake up every morning next to the man who was actively trying to kill me. I had to let him kiss my cheek. I had to sit at the kitchen table and drink the tea Chloe made for me, watching them openly grope each other the second they thought my back was turned. They grew bolder. Because they truly believed I lived in absolute silence, they stopped holding back. They would sit on the couch right next to me while we watched TV, and they would talk about my death in graphic, horrifying detail. "I think we should do it the week of the charity gala," Marcus said one evening, casually throwing his arm around the back of the sofa, his fingers brushing against my hair. I was pretending to read subtitles on a cooking show. "I'll throw that big fundraiser to honor her brave recovery. It sets me up as the perfect grieving husband. Everyone in the city will see how much I love her." Then, a few days later, tragic heart failure. "That's brilliant, babe," Chloe replied, eating popcorn from a bowl in her lap. "God, look at her. She just stares at the TV like an idiot. Do you think she even has thoughts in there anymore?" "Who cares?" Marcus laughed. "Just a few more weeks, Chloe." Then this house, the business, the $3 million. It's all ours. I had to suppress every natural human instinct I possessed. When Marcus handed me my daily pill organizer, I had to look him in the eye and smile gratefully, even as he said out loud, "Eat up, Maya." "Let's get that heart rate up." I had to pretend to swallow the pills, coughing them into my hand the second he looked away, and hiding them in my pockets to flush down the toilet later. It was agonizing. It was a waking hell. Every day I spent with them chipped away at my sanity. But I didn't break. I didn't shed a single tear where they could see it, because while they thought I was just a helpless death victim waiting to be slaughtered, they had no idea what was actually happening behind my blank, silent eyes. I wasn't just surviving. I was turning into a strategist. I was meticulously cataloging every word, every plan, every detail. They thought my silence was their greatest advantage, but they were about to learn that my silence was actually the weapon that was going to destroy their entire lives. The very next morning, Marcus and Chloe left the house for a gym session that I knew was just a thinly veiled excuse to hook up at her apartment. The moment I heard Marcus's BMW pull out of the driveway, the helpless death invalid vanished. I sprung from the couch, my mind crystal clear and running 1,000 miles a minute. I was not going to be a victim. I was not going to be the tragic dead wife in Marcus's sob story. If they wanted a war, I was going to give them one that would obliterate them. I grabbed my purse, pulled out a secret emergency credit card I'd had since before we were married, one Marcus didn't know existed, and called an Uber. I didn't drive my own car because I knew Marcus had installed a tracking app on my phone under the guise of keeping me safe after the accident. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, ensuring my dot on his map stayed exactly where it was supposed to be. I went straight to a specialty electronics store downtown. I bought 3 high-definition, motion-activated spy cameras. One was disguised as a digital alarm clock, which I placed on the bookshelf in the living room. Another was hidden inside a fake potted plant, which went directly onto the kitchen island. The last was a tiny audio recorder, no bigger than a thumbnail, that I taped underneath the dining room table. But my most important purchase was for myself. I bought a beautiful, elegant pearl pendant necklace that contained a state-of-the-art wire and microphone. From that day on, I wore it constantly. When Marcus asked about it, I simply signed to him that it was a gift from my mother, and wearing it made me feel safe. He just rolled his eyes, muttered, "Whatever makes you happy, you pathetic little dog," and went back to his phone. Over the next 2 weeks, my hidden cameras and my necklace captured pure, unadulterated evil. I recorded them kissing in my kitchen. I recorded them drinking my expensive wine while complaining about how my depressing presence was ruining their vibe. And I recorded the financial motive, crystal clear and undeniably premeditated. I checked the policy again today, Marcus said one evening, sitting on the edge of the coffee table right in front of the hidden clock camera. I was sitting mere feet away, staring blankly at a magazine. The $3 million pays out within 30 days of an accidental death. As soon as the funds clear, we're booking first class tickets to the Amalfi Coast. I've already been looking at villas we can buy. God, I can't wait, Chloe sighed, tracing her finger down his jaw. I'm so sick of this house. I'm so sick of her just sitting there taking up space. You're sure the pills will work? I'm positive, Marcus chuckled. A cold, soulless sound. It will perfectly mimic a massive, sudden cardiac arrest. The doctors won't even bat an eye. I had the motive, I had the method. But I knew that to guarantee they never saw the light of day again, I couldn't go to the local police. Local cops might bungle it. Marcus could hire an expensive lawyer to claim the recordings were illegally obtained or taken out of context. No, I needed a nuclear option. I needed federal jurisdiction. I needed my older brother, David. David had spent 15 years in the FBI's Major Crimes Division before retiring to run an elite private security firm. He was 6'3", built like a tank, and aggressively protective of me. On a Tuesday afternoon, while Marcus was at work and Chloe was supposedly running errands, I used my burner phone to call David and told him to meet me at a discreet coffee shop across town. When I walked in, speaking perfectly normally, his jaw practically unhinged. Maya, you're hearing. It came back 3 weeks ago, I said, sliding into the booth. I kept my voice low, my eyes scanning the room. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell Marcus? David asked, a huge, relieved smile breaking across his face. I didn't answer. I just pulled out my laptop, plugged in a pair of headphones, and slid them across the table to my brother. Listened to the file named Timeline. I sat there and watched my brother's face as he listened to my husband and my best friend plot my murder. I watched his relief morph into confusion, then horror, and finally, a volcanic, white-hot rage. His hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles turned bone. White, the veins in his neck pulsed. When the recording finished, David took the headphones off. The silence between us was heavy and I'm going to kill him, David whispered, his voice shaking with a terrifying, lethal calm. I am going to drive to his office right now, drag him out by his throat, and break every bone in his body. No, you aren't, I said, reaching across the table and gripping his hands. If you touch him, you go to prison. And I am not losing my brother over a piece of trash like Marcus. Maya, he's trying to murder you. They are going to poison you. I know, I said, my voice steady. But I have it under control. I've been swapping the pills he gives me with my actual medication. I spit his poison out every single time. David, I don't just want him arrested. I want him destroyed. I want them both to lose everything, and I want them to spend the rest of their miserable lives in a federal penitentiary. David stared at me, seeing the absolute diamond hard resolve in my eyes. The protective older brother slowly gave way to the seasoned FBI veteran. He took a deep breath, his mind already shifting into tactical mode. This is wire fraud, David said, his voice dropping into a professional murmur. It's conspiracy to commit murder. It's insurance fraud. If we package this right, we can hand it directly to my old task force at the Bureau. But Maya, to make it an airtight federal slam dunk, we need to catch them in the act. We need them to make the final move. They are making it soon, I told him. Marcus is planning something big. He's been talking about an event. Something where he can establish his alibi as the perfect grieving husband. And I was right. That very night, the stage for my ultimate revenge was set. When Marcus came home, he had a massive, sickeningly sweet smile plastered on his face. He sat down next to me on the couch and handed me a dry erase whiteboard. Baby, he wrote, making sure to look at me with soft, loving eyes. I've organized a massive charity gala for this Saturday night at the Grand Bayfront Hotel. It's to honor your brave recovery and raise money for trauma victims. Over 300 people are coming. I want to celebrate you. I looked at the whiteboard, then looked up at my husband. He was planning to parade me around in front of the entire city, cementing his image as a saint just days before he planned to execute me in our bed. I smiled, took the marker, and wrote back, "I can't wait. It will be a night everyone remembers." And I meant every single word. Saturday morning arrived with a heavy, suffocating tension in the house. I stayed in bed a little longer than usual, pretending to be asleep, but under my covers, my phone was open to the live feed from the kitchen camera. I watched the screen as Marcus and Chloe stood by the kitchen island. Marcus was dressed in his silk pajama pants, looking relaxed and confident, while Chloe leaned against the marble counter sipping coffee. "Tonight is the night," Marcus said, his voice a low, excited murmur. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, unmarked plastic baggie containing 2 white pills. "I'll put them in her organizer for the evening dose. After the gala, we come home. I give her the pills with her tea, and by 3 a.m. it's over." Chloe smiled, a cold, reptilian stretch of her lips. "Make sure she drinks all the tea. I don't want her surviving and ending up a vegetable. We need the full payout." "She'll drink it," Marcus laughed softly. "She does everything I tell her. She's completely dependent on me." I watched him open my daily pill organizer, the one he had so lovingly managed since my accident. He popped open the Saturday evening compartment, removed my actual blood thinners and replaced them with the lethal stimulants. Then he tossed my real medication down the garbage disposal and turned on the blades. My heart pounded against my ribs, but my hands were steady. As soon as I heard them head out to the garage to run some errands for the gala, I slipped out of bed. I walked calmly into the kitchen, opened the Saturday slot, removed the poison, and slipped the 2 pills into a small plastic evidence bag David had given me. I replaced them with 2 identical-looking aspirin. When Marcus and Chloe returned, I was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, reading a magazine. "Hey, baby," Marcus said out loud, walking over and kissing my forehead. "Big night tonight. You ready to look beautiful?" I looked up, gave him my best, most adoring smile, and signed, "I'm ready." That evening, the transformation began. I put on a stunning floor-length emerald green silk dress. I pinned my hair up elegantly and applied my makeup with absolute precision. I clasped the pearl pendant necklace, my hidden wire, around my neck. As I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the broken, helpless, death woman Marcus thought I was. I saw a predator waiting in the tall grass. Marcus walked in wearing a tailored tuxedo. He looked at me and actually teared up. "You look perfect, Maya," he said, signing the word for beautiful. Out loud, he added, "Enjoy your last party, my sweet, stupid wife." I smiled brightly and took his arm. The Grand Bayfront Hotel ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the 300 guests dressed in their finest evening wear. Waiters circulated with silver trays of champagne. Marcus wheeled me to the front table, playing the role of the devoted, tragic husband to absolute perfection. People came up to us all night, patting Marcus on the shoulder, giving me pitying smiles, and loudly whispering about how brave and inspiring our love was. Chloe was there, of course, wearing a red dress that was entirely inappropriate for a charity gala, hovering near Marcus and playing the supportive best friend. At 9 p.m., the lights dimmed. The chatter died down as Marcus walked up the steps to the main stage and stood behind the podium. Behind him was a massive projector screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice echoing through the silent ballroom. He paused, wiping a perfectly timed tear from his eye. "Thank you all for being here tonight to support trauma victims. As many of you know, my beautiful wife, Maya, suffered a horrific accident that took her hearing and plunged her into a world of total silence." The crowd murmured in sympathy. I sat in my wheelchair, my face perfectly blank. My right hand slipped casually into the silk pocket of my dress. My fingers wrapped around the small black remote control. My brother David had synced to the hotel's AV system earlier that afternoon. "It has been the hardest month of our lives," Marcus continued, his voice breaking with manufactured emotion. Chloe stood near the edge of the stage, nodding sorrowfully. "But through the darkness, Maya's strength has inspired me. I love her more than life itself, and I would do anything, to take her pain away." He raised his champagne glass. to my silent angel. I pulled the remote from my pocket. I looked at Marcus, looked at Chloe, and pressed the center button. The giant projector screen behind Marcus suddenly flashed black. The soft background music cut out instantly, and then a voice blasted through the ballroom's massive surround sound speakers. I checked the policy again today. It was Marcus's voice, crystal clear, echoing off the high ceilings. The $3 million pays out within 30 days of an accidental death. As soon as the funds clear, we're booking first class tickets to the Amalfi Coast. The entire ballroom froze. Marcus froze, his champagne glass suspended in mid-air. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. Then, Chloe's voice boomed through the speakers. God, I can't wait. I'm so sick of this house. I'm so sick of her just sitting there taking up space. You're sure the pills will work? I'm positive, the recorded Marcus laughed. That same cold, soulless laugh I'd heard in my living room. It will perfectly mimic a massive, sudden cardiac arrest. The doctors won't even bat an eye. Gasps erupted across the room. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the marble floor. People were standing up, covering their mouths in horror. Marcus panicked. He lunged at the podium microphone. Turn that off. That's a fake. Someone is setting me up. I stood up from my wheelchair. The movement caught the attention of the front row, and like a wave, 300 heads turned to watch me walk calmly, steadily up the stairs to the stage. And I walked right up to the podium, right up to my husband, who was trembling, his eyes wide with a terror so pure it was intoxicating. I took the microphone from his shaking hands. I looked out at the sea of shocked faces, then turned to look my husband dead in the eye. I hear you perfectly now, Marcus, I said. My voice was loud, clear, and steady. Marcus stumbled backward as if I had shot him. Maya, you're hearing. It came back 3 weeks ago, I said into the microphone, letting the entire room hear the destruction of his lies. 3 weeks of listening to you and my best friend plan my murder in my own home. 3 weeks of watching you poison my pills. 3 weeks of waiting for this exact moment. Maya, please. Chloe sobbed from the edge of the stage, her fake sympathy gone, replaced by absolute panic. It's not what it sounds like. It's exactly what it sounds like, a booming voice echoed from the back of the room. The heavy mahogany doors of the ballroom burst open. My brother David strode in, his FBI badge held high, followed by a dozen federal agents in tactical gear. Marcus Sterling and Chloe Vance, David announced, his voice slicing through the chaos. You are both under arrest for wire fraud, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The agents swarmed the stage. Marcus tried to run, but David tackled him, slamming him face first onto the polished wood of the stage. The sound of the handcuffs clicking around his wrists was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. Chloe was screaming, crying, begging for mercy as a female agent cuffed her and dragged her away in her ruined red dress. As they hauled Marcus past me, his face was contorted in shock, rage, and profound defeat. He looked at me, realizing that the helpless death burden had orchestrated his complete and total destruction. Enjoy the Amalfi Coast, Marcus, I whispered. The fallout was swift, brutal, and absolutely glorious. Because we had them on federal wiretap, hidden camera, and physical evidence, thanks to the poisoned pills I'd saved, there was no trial. Their defense attorneys took one look at the mountain of irrefutable evidence David and I had collected and advised them to plead guilty. Marcus and Chloe turned on each other immediately. Chloe tried to claim Marcus brainwashed her. Marcus claimed Chloe supplied the pills. It didn't matter. The federal judge was disgusted by the sheer cruelty of their premeditated plot. They were both sentenced to 25 years to life in a federal maximum security penitentiary without the possibility of parole. The divorce was the easiest part. Can have it, and a papier. Because Marcus was convicted of trying to murder me for financial gain. The judge stripped him of everything. I was awarded 100% of our marital assets, the business, and the house. Marcus walked away with nothing but his prison uniform and a mountain of legal debt. I sold the house. I couldn't stand the thought of living where they had plotted against me. I bought a beautiful modern condo overlooking Lake Michigan. decorated exactly how I wanted it, with no compromises. I took the money I earned from the sale of our shared assets and started a non-profit foundation. We provide hidden cameras, legal counsel, and emergency extraction funds for victims of domestic abuse and financial fraud. We help people who feel trapped and invisible realize that they have the power to fight back. Sometimes, late at night, I think about those 3 weeks. I think about the agony of sitting in silence, listening to the people I loved plan my funeral, but I don't feel sadness anymore. I feel an overwhelming sense of pride. They thought my silence was weakness. They thought my vulnerability made me an easy target, but my silence was their execution. To anyone out there watching this, to anyone who feels trapped, ignored, or underestimated by the person who is supposed to love you, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it is. Document everything. Be strategic. Be cold if you have to be. You are stronger than you know, and you are never, ever as helpless as they want you to believe. They might think they hold all the cards, but the moment you decide you are worth fighting for, you change the entire game. Never let them see you break. Just smile, gather your evidence, and prepare for your main event. My name is Maya. I am 36 years old. I survived my husband's murder plot, and I am finally, beautifully, perfectly free.